Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video. Today's video is actually for an Altenew blog hop. I'm going to be using this stamp set called Forever in Love. It has some large floral bouquets in it, which I think are beautiful. I'm also going to be using Altenew's detailed watercolor brushes. And then this 36 pan watercolor set. Now I've owned this for quite a while, but today I'm going to be using it a little bit differently. What you see on my paper here is this is black watercolor cardstock, and this is the Stonehenge Legion brand, and I am going to do some stamping in Versamark ink to do some white heat embossing. I do just want to note as we're doing this, this is for Watercolor Blog Hop by Altenew, which has a ton of great inspiration on it, but it also has tons of opportunities to win. So they're doing $300 worth of giveaways. They're giving away 2 $50 gift certificates and 8 $25 gift certificates to the store for comments left along the hop. So if you're watching on YouTube, I'll link it below so you can head over to the blog page to hop along so that you don't miss your chance to win. Here, I'm using this is new to me, a sticky mat for my Misty, which I'm totally in love with. And I used it to hold my cards since my cardstock was a little bit smaller than a regular A2 size card. It gave me the opportunity to stick my cardstock right to the sticky mat and not have to worry about using the magnet, which was amazing. So now this is something very interesting happened here. This is the first time I've used this watercolor paper, this black watercolor paper, and I bought it to go with my metallics. But in trying different things with my regular watercolors, I realized that they also showed up on this black watercolor paper, which I thought was really cool and gave a much different look. So here what I'm doing is I'm heat setting. This is my regular white embossing powder, and I stamped it with my regular Versamark ink. Nothing's changed except for the paper. And what I found was it almost like absorbed the embossing. You can see like down on the left-hand side where like it's not super crisp. It's very kind of, I don't know, it's flat, it's not raised, and it like almost absorbed into the paper. Very strange. So I do have a way to fix that. I'm not sure in the future how I would go about stamping an image so I could watercolor it without using the heat embossing. I'll have to kind of play around and see, maybe a white pigment ink that I heat set. I'm not sure. But I originally started out, this is pretty much just playtime, but I videotaped it for you. You're welcome. Videotaped it. Isn't that such like an archaic way of speaking it? Like VHS is not even a thing anymore. But this is what, this is the terminology that I know. So here I did what I normally would do, which is I started with my darkest color and tried to kind of pull it out. That did not really work. Altenew watercolors are a little bit thicker. It's almost like working with a gouache versus a thinner watercolor, which actually helps them to, I think, to stand out on the black paper. I'm not sure. I didn't try any other watercolors. I only tried it with this, and it's just because I was playing around and happened to discover it. So I'll have to do a little bit more investigating to see whether or not that would work. But so I wanted to do some pinks. I am not working on 2 petals that are next to each other because I had that heat embossing kind of fail. I want to make sure that they're not going to be running into each other. I am using the 2 different colors of pink. So here you can see I started with the lighter pink and kind of faded it out. But then I'm going to go back in with a little bit more of the lighter pink and then that darker pink again. I found that the lighter colors, which is really no surprise, the lighter colors did tend to show up a bit better on the darker cardstock. But I would expect that for my colored pencils, as well. So anything that would be sitting on top of the paper, I would expect that the lighter colors would show up much better on the darker paper. And actually what kind of makes this pretty cool is that you can see those lighter tones on the darker cardstock. So once those are done, I'm just going to go in with the lighter pink and kind of just sporadically pick different petals. This is a little bit more detailed, and I don't really have to do a lot of work to add the pigment because I'm not really trying to build up any sort of realistic shading with this particular type of watercolor, which to be honest was pretty freeing, to just kind of drop in the color, let it do what it does, and then just move on to the next one versus trying to get real shadows and shading and things like that. I mean, I did still add the darker pigment to the like more of the base of the petal and the lighter pigment out on the edge of the petal. That was still true for this. But other than that, I wasn't really trying to add any like depth or shading. I was just trying to paint something pretty, and I was really happy with the way that it came out. So for this rose, I wanted to play around with a little bit of the yellows and mix them with the lighter pink. That didn't work out terribly well for me, just because I think it's not like this particular technique is not like traditional watercolors. And so I had a little bit of a harder time getting them to both be visible. So I decided to try the darker pink as well, which I did like. But then my colors, like my flowers were two different colors and I couldn't have that. It just didn't seem to go well. So we are going to go back and add some yellow to that first rose as well, to just get them to be kind of more cohesive and on the same page for this little bouquet. So yeah, this was pretty fun to do, and the paper was not terribly expensive. I had previously bought a black watercolor paper, and I didn't like it at all. It just didn't work. I'm not sure if it's because, you guys know I'm a cheap chicken, so I'm not sure if it's because I kind of cheaped out on the paper or what. This seemed to work much better. I also picked up at the same time that I bought this a Strathmore mixed media paper, which you can also watercolor on. I have not tried that one yet either. This one was the one that I had already cut, and it was sitting here, and so I just kind of painted myself a little flower just to see if it would show up, and it did, and now here we are. So yeah, we're heading into our vacation week, which is exciting. So the couple of things that we've settled on that we're going to do is a water park. Peanut wants to go to, it's kind of like an arcade. It's called Scene 75 here. It's like an arcade that also has like mini golf and go-karts and stuff like that. I think we are going to try to do the mini golf outside at some point this week, where one of us can just either carry Caitlin or push her in her stroller. That would be more of like an evening activity that we're going to try to do. The other thing that we're going to try to do is Eric has which if you remember from last year, he also played in this police and fire softball game. So he would like to get to the batting cages at some point. And so there is another type of, it's not Scene 75, but it's another type of thing like that. But it's outdoor that has batting cages and go-karts, which I think Peanut would super love the go-karts. So a couple of different things that we have planned. We're also going to try to squeeze in a date night because we haven't had one since the beginning of May. Parenting's hard, y'all. Trying to make time for your significant other and your relationship is you just get so caught up in the day-to-day that you don't even realize that you haven't spent any time alone together. Which is, I mean, not that I don't love my children, I do, but I also love my husband, and so it would be nice if every once in a while we got to spend time together that was not just sitting on the couch watching, whatever television program happens to be on. I'm not really a TV person. To begin with, it was one of the things that, like, for years I didn't watch television after I had Peanut because I didn't have time for everything. And so it was real easy for me to let TV go. I'm kind of the same way with movies. I'm not really, it's got to be a really good something or other to keep my attention for that long. I just have a super hard time concentrating. And then if you add in going to the movie theater, the snacks are so expensive. Why do the snacks cost so much? Like, I could be down the street at like a CVS and pick up an entire bag of Sour Patch Kids for like $2, I go into the movie theater. If I want a box that is half the size, not even half, a quarter of the size of my bag of Sour Patch Kids, I have to pay $9 for it. Like, why? Why are the snacks so expensive? I don't understand. So anyway, I'm just not really a movie goer. I think that, I don't know. I don't think my mom is really necessarily well, no, that's not true, because when they go to Vegas, she goes to movies all the time. So maybe she does like movies. I'll have to ask my mother about that. But it's just not really for me, regardless. Not that I don't have TV programs or movies that I've enjoyed over the years. I certainly have. I really like the ones that, like, movie-wise, that are kind of like psychological thrillers, that kind of take you by surprise. What are some good examples of that? Like Identity was a good one. What's that one with Matthew McConaughey? Frailty. Frailty was another good one that was like a psychological thriller. Memento, little borderline there. So these are all like older movies, obviously. The irony of me not being a movie person is I used to work in a video rental store. I used to work at Movie Mart. I got my first job at McDonald's when I was 15. That was like my first real job. Before that, I worked at a haunted house because I was only 14. No one would hire me. But at 15, I got a job at McDonald's. And then I did a short stint over at the Dollar General. I worked there for a little bit. And then eventually made my way to Movie Mart, which I really liked that job. It wasn't, I obviously had to work every week. I had to work every weekend, but I was still in school, so I only sporadically picked up shifts during the week. It would be like if somebody called off and they really needed somebody to cover. And in fact, I even remember one time, my manager's name was Chris. She had called me and was like, "Hey, can you come in?" And I was like, "No, I have homework. Like, I have to do this homework. Like, I can't come in." And she was like, "Bring the homework with you. I don't even care if you sit behind the desk and do it. Like, I just need a body present." So I did. I ate a lot of East of Chicago when I worked there because it was right next door and I used to get their salads all the time. But yeah, so just out of convenience. Speaking of that, we just had pizza the other night and it was East of Chicago. It's close to our house, so that convenience factor again, I can't help it. I can't get away from it. Anything that's going to save me time or, not inconvenience me, like, I'm here for. So here you can see I'm doing the leaves. I just picked some greens, a lighter green, it's almost like the green is like a sage color, a yellow green, and then a teal. And I'm just mixing and matching them to my heart contents. Like, I'm not worried about them blending together or being like specific shading on the leaves. I'm just throwing them where I throw them and being happy with where they land. And so ultimately, pretty happy with the way that this turned out. Really love the way it looks on the black. So there were a couple of areas that I didn't feel like the pink was kind of prevalent enough. So I did go back in and just add those few to like the darker areas, or that I felt should be darker, that brighter pink. But yeah, you'll have to let me know what you think of this technique. Like, obviously you need the black watercolor paper. I'm not going to pretend like you don't. But outside of that one expense, really cool, kind of impactful card. So here's how I'm going to fix that embossing, and you can fix any kind of white embossing with this same trick. I am using a Jelly Roll white gel pen to just outline my image. Same way that I would do if I was Copa coloring something and I wanted a bold black outline. This time I wanted a bold white outline, and so that is how I just, Rent. Have never seen that on Broadway either. Not really a musical person. No movies, no musicals. But anyway, I went over the entire image with this white pen. This one kind of does have a wider tip. This is a 10. Normally I use an 8. But this is what I grabbed and I was happy with the way that it looked. Once that was done, I was looking at the image and I felt like it just needed a little something else. And so remember when I told you that I bought the cardstock to go with my metallic watercolors, which are also by Altenew? I decided that I was going to get these out. I ended up using, I think it's like the jade color, I think is what I used. It might have not been. It might have been the turquoise. I'm not sure, or aquamarine, but it's like a light green, and I'm just going to do little splatters of that over the background of the card. Totally optional. Some people aren't into like the messier look, but I just felt like it needed something. And the metallics, I was totally right. The metallics look amazing on this cardstock, so I'm super excited to give that a try here in the near future. But my splatters weren't coming off as big as I wanted, and so I did go in and just kind of draw a couple of little spatters with just the tip of my paintbrush. You can see how far back I'm holding that paintbrush, so it's just very loose in my hand. Just putting in a little couple dots of dabs here and there. And you can see it's super pretty. When I cut the watercolor paper, it did have some kind of fuzzies on it. I'm sure I probably need to change my blade, but also it could just be the texture of the paper. Watercolor paper does tend to have more tooth and be a little bit thicker. So I just trimmed those off with my scissors. Now I have regular black cardstock that I am going to do my sentiments with. The sentiments are from the Fresh Cut Roses. I thought that this would be a really kind of cool dynamic wedding card. So I'm treating with my anti-static tool, and then I'm going to go ahead and stamp these in Versamark, and you'll be able to see this is the same process that we used before on the watercolor paper, but the result is a much bolder, more solid white, which is what it's supposed to be. So something to keep in mind if you do decide to try the watercolor cardstock with the white embossing. You might have to outline it, or just embrace that there's kind of a lighter outline to work with. So once I was happy with the way that these looked, kind of cleaned up any spots that I had embossing powder where I didn't want it, then I'm going to go ahead and heat set this. I always have my heat tool heating up before I bring it to the paper. That way I limit the amount of warping that I have, since I do like to cut them into labels. I like them to be as flat as possible. Once those are all set, which didn't take any time at all, I just went ahead and trimmed them down. What I noticed after I trimmed them down was that the Wedding Wishes one was a little bit too wide. It covered up quite a bit of the floral bouquet, which I didn't want to do. So there are dies, I believe, that match this. I don't own them, so I just hand trimmed it. I just kind of fussy cut around the sentiment to make it a little bit smaller so that you'd be able to see more of the bouquet. So anyway, I don't even know what my rant was about. Movies being expensive and something about not liking musicals. But anywho, so we are, I'm excited about the couple of things that we're going to be able to do. The other thing that we're going to do, which isn't necessarily going anywhere, is we are going to knock out the celebrating of the July birthdays with Eric's side of the family. We have not yet had an opportunity to do that. So Eric's mom is graciously providing all of the food, even though we are hosting at our house, just because it's easier to have Caitlin at home so that she can nap or go to bed when necessary versus trying to transport her places. So she's doing all of that, and the only thing I'm responsible for is the cake, which we all know that I like to bake, and when I have time to do it, is something that's super easy that I can knock out. You can see here I am using all of the foam tapes on this panel. This panel is about 1/4 of an inch smaller than a regular A2 size card. I am popping this up on a regular black cardstock, so it's black on black, but obviously the tones are a little bit different because one's watercolor and one is a more traditional black cardstock. And then I am just going to glue my sentiments down. I think I went with more of a bottom right look, which nobody's surprised by because that's my normal go-to placement. But all in all was really, I just thought this was super cool that you could see, because I've watched tons of other videos, and it must be just dependent upon what kind of watercolors you have. I've watched other videos where people are like, it doesn't show up on black. You have to use gouache. But I didn't. I just used these watercolors and they came out super cool. So if somebody had like a kind of dramatic wedding, a very like black tie affair, I think that this would be an appropriate card. Pearls are coming back, y'all. Not just sequins, not just rhinestones. Pearls are making their way back. And so that is what I put on the card to accent my sentiment. And then that's it. That's the whole thing. So thank you guys so much for joining me. I always appreciate you spending your precious time with me. And I will catch you guys on the next video. Bye.